Good morning. You know what, Tristan? I might have turned myself too loud. You be the judge, okay, buddy? You might have to pull me down a hair because on that. What do you think, Casey? Pull him down. I can still hear him. You'll know after. Oh, yeah, I love it. Steve Miller's in the back going, yeah. Perfect. So it does feel loud, doesn't it? You're not answering me. Yeah, a little loud. Yeah, so pull down. Okay, what do you think now? That's just perfect. Good job, Tristan. Thank you. Let's start over. Good morning. Welcome to those of you joining us online. We're glad that you're here this morning to worship with us, and I'm glad that you guys are here this morning as well. Looks like a beautiful Sunday outside. I want to mention, if you have this, if you're wondering what that thing is in the lower left-hand corner of this screen, it's the QR code that helps you get the Bible app. For some reason, the Bible app can't find us unless you type in Kerwinsville Alliance. It used to be able to find you based on location. It's not behaving that way anymore. So that code can help you, or if you type in Kerwinsville Alliance, that can help you find the Bible app to follow along if you like to do that sort of thing. We're going to begin this morning by singing For the Beauty of the Earth. If you're comfortable doing so, let's stand together. Sacrifice of love, Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. Amen. Please be seated. So I was mentioning earlier, I kind of like to tease the church secretary, Autumn, about when she puts a background on a slide that looks particularly feminine. And and so she put the background for the slide up last week and sent me a text. She loaded it, saved it on the computer, and sent me a text and said, "Don't get all worried about this background with the basket full of flowers. It's Mother's Day." So look what she's making up with. A couple guys sitting around a fire fishing. That doesn't get any more masculine than that, right? That's fun to tease that way. Hey, I want to share with you some things going on at Kerwinsville Alliance. First, I want to remind you of Mahaffey Camp International Workers' Day, and that's going to be the last Thursday of July, probably the last Thursday of camp anyway. The Alliance women are going to host a table there. They give supplies away to our missionaries, and we've compiled a list of items that are needed. You can grab a slip from the display in the lobby if you'd like, and you can collect all of those. Grab a slip or two. If you have any questions, Kay Rolls or Doris Haynes would be happy to speak to you concerning that. Also, don't want you to forget, there's a new marriage small group called Connecting Through the Chaos. It begins on 6/11 at 6 p.m. here at church. If you're married and want to learn how your spouse thinks, come and join us as we work through For Men Only, For Women Only curriculum by Jeff and Shantae Feldman. There's going to be food, fellowship, and other couples looking to embrace the chaos of marriage. There's a sign-up sheet on the bulletin board near the elevator. If you have any questions, you can speak to Brandon and Deanna Root root, they'd be glad to talk to you about that. And I think I've mentioned before that Saturday Morning Men's Group, probably, wow, it must have been like 15 years ago, we read the book For Men Only, What Women Wish Their Husbands Knew About Them, or Wives. And that was by Shante Feldman. It was a good book, and the men enjoyed reading that. Kind of had a femi cover, but other than that, it was a good book. I need to stop now or I'll be in trouble. New Morning Small Group for Men. We're going to be reading a book by Gary Thomas called When to Walk Away. We're going to begin that on June 10th. If you would like to attend, we'd like you to sign up on a bulletin board near the elevator so we can tell you of any cancellations or anything. You'll need to purchase the book. There are some guys that come to breakfast. They just come for the discussion. They don't purchase or read the book, and you're welcome to do that as well. You can talk to me if you have any questions concerning that. If you're graduating, we'd like to know that. Please fill out a form and let us know. Summer youth camps are coming up at Mahaffey. Brochures on the literature table in the lobby. And I'll let you read the rest of these items if you would like to. I do want to mention to you a couple of things we're praying about. Jeff, there's a couple of these that are not on the list, so you'll want to have your pencil sharp. One that's not on the list is that Brandon is preaching in Carthus today. And so pray for Brandon as he preaches there. He took his family and went up there. What an excellent opportunity that is to fill the pulpit for that young guy. He's young. Everyone's young, huh? Anyway, I'm pretty excited about him doing that. He won't be doing that regularly, like he's not their new pastor, but when they're without a pastor, and they will be for several months, he'll have great opportunity to fill the pulpit, and that'll be such a good experience for him. So pray for him as he's going up there today. He and his family have had a very chaotic week. His sister-in-law has some personal issues she's dealing with, and she remains hospitalized, and so if you would pray regarding them, that would be very helpful. Also, here's one that's not on the list as well. A gentleman in our community named Ed Allison passed away. If you happen to know Ed, or if you knew him, I'm doing his funeral, and I'd just like to talk to people who've known him if you have any input that would be helpful for me. Please be praying for his family, if you would, and pray that I would be able to minister to them in a way that's helpful and healthy for them. Just want to remind you to be praying for those in our church family who are expecting and adopting. My daughter and her husband are expecting, and Hannah Bloom is expecting, and then there's those who are adopting. So remember them in prayer if you would. Also be praying if you would for the Fords. They'll be coming home in a couple of weeks, and pray that everything will go well as they're coming home from the field and going to be spending the summer here. They stay at Mahaffey Camp when they're here, and so we have them nearby. They'll be speaking to us in June, so that's pretty exciting. Pray also, if you would, for Eric and Vicky as they're coming home from West Africa. They're going to be with us this fall, so that's exciting as well. And so pray for them, though. That transition with the kids and everything is a big deal. Always pray for military, law enforcement, first responders. Pray for those who are struggling with addiction. Pray as well, if you would, for, wow, I had it and I lost it. Oh, there she is, Casey. Pray for Casey. She has some physical issues she's dealing with, and on top of that, I think her immune system was down, and she got a cold, and it really slammed her. She said she could sing, but she'd be singing bass if she was singing up here, so you're stuck with me alone. So be praying for Casey, if you would, regarding the physical issues she is going through. And I'll let you read the rest of these requests, and you can remember them in prayer if you would be willing to do so. Okay? Going to grab a couple guys to help with the offering. How about Steve and Huck? Could the two of you please help us out? Steve Miller and Huck. This is a time when those of us who call Kerwinsville Alliance our church home give our tithes and offerings. If you're visiting with us, we don't expect you to give. We're just glad that you're here today. Steve's going to pray, if you would, Steve, and just ask God to bless this offering.
Thank you, Lord, for all your good gifts. Thank you for your love for us each day. Pray that you use these offerings for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I did neglect to mention an announcement. Laurel and I will be at National, what do they call it? The National Council of the Christian Missionary Alliance, which is meeting in Spokane, Washington. Say it however you'd like. And so I will not be here next Sunday. Bernie Neffley has, for the 5th time, retired. And so I thought, I can't get Bernie to preach. But just after he announced on Facebook, I'm finally retired, I'm not doing any more, I sent him a text, said, hey, can you preach at Kerwinsville? He said, yeah. And the reason is because he loves you guys. I had to twist his arm. Actually, I shamed him into coming here to preach. And the first time he was here, he wore a kilt. I don't know if you remember that. And he just fell in love with Kerwinsville Alliance. He said, you have such a great bunch of people. I love being there. And so you're blessed because he's going to be here next week. I'm so thankful for Tristan and the work he does at the computer and the sound desk back there. But Tristan, you're not on your own next week. I just texted Doug and Drew, and they said they'll be here to help you out. So that's a real blessing as well. We're very blessed. And I'm thankful I thought about Gail. I'm so thankful for Gail. She picks the songs. And if I picked the songs, we'd be singing the same 3 every week. So thank you for doing that.
You know them.
At least I would know them. Yeah, right. So this, man, that's great. So this song that she's picked is by a gentleman named A.B. Simpson. He's a founder of the Christian and Missionary Alliance. And he's talking about how really our focus is on things above, specifically on Christ, and not on all the extra things, the extra blessings he gives, but on him, himself alone. So if you're comfortable doing so, let's stand together and we'll sing this. Once it was a blessing, now it is the Lord. Once it was the feeling, now it is His word. Once the gift I wanted, now the giver own. Once I sought for healing, now Himself alone. All in all forever, Jesus will I sing. Everything in Jesus, and Jesus everything. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the QR code. And children are dismissed. If they want to go to children's church, go ahead, guys. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the QR code. And if you look at that with the camera on your phone and click the link that pops up, it'll take you to the Bible app event. You can follow along that way if you would like to do so. You can actually, for some reason or other, our Bible app isn't showing up geographically, but if you type in the name Kerwinsville Alliance, it'll find it for you. You can follow that way. You can also use this thing called a paper Bible, which is really a cool thing, and that might be helpful to you as well. We're going to be in Colossians chapter 3, looking at verses 1 through 4, and there is a Bible app event for this message. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about obsession, among other things. And when I use that word obsession, I'm not using it in a clinical, institutional kind of way, like you need to be institutionalized. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking to it about in a common, everyday way that you and I deal with it. Sometimes things get on our mind and we just can't get them off our mind, or tasks or whatever, and we can become obsessed about it. And I believe that God can help us with that. If you look at the screen, you look at that picture of that beautiful woman there. She happens to be, that's an 1852 illustration from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And if you look at that, you can see that's the queen looking into the mirror. I read Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from a very early version of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. And those fairy tales are not rated G. I just want to tell you that. This Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs has some things in it that Disney left out. Child abandonment is there, attempted murder, multiple tries, and detailed exactly how it was tried. And then the way the queen dies at the end is absolutely bizarre. I'm not going to share it with you, but it's torture. If you'd like to read it, have at it. It's online. I wouldn't read it to my children, particularly not before they go to bed. It's kind of crazy. I'm guessing that all of you know at least one spoken line from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If I say, give me one line, you're thinking, I wonder what that would be. And if I say, give me one song, you'd be like, hi-ho, it's off to work we go, right? But one line, I can't think of any line that Snow White herself said. I can't think of any line that the prince said or whoever rescued her. I can't think of anything that Dopey or Sneezy said except to chew. But what about that queen? Oh yeah, the wicked queen. We all know her line, right? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? I don't know, have you seen the 1982 production that had, it was called Snow White and the Huntsman? Did you see that? It's PG-13, I think, version. And Charlize Theron is the wicked queen in that. And baby, she brings that to life. She does a great job acting that out. And what she really gives you a glimpse of is the obsession that the queen had. She was absolutely obsessed. Obsession, it's really something that storytellers use quite often in their plots. Think of maybe stories or movies you're familiar with. You might think of The Godfather. And the obsession there is Don Corleone is obsessed with protecting his family, and it costs him his family. Or you might think of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Cape Fear, whether it's the old one with, I had his name and I lost it, the old one or the newer one. Both of those, you can see that the bad guy in that is obsessed with Gregory Peck's family. Gregory Peck is the guy I'm thinking of. You can just see the obsession there. And even Phantom of the Opera, there's an element of obsession there in that. It would almost seem like obsession is something with which writers are obsessed, that it just works well for them when they're putting things down on paper. You know, I will tell you that I struggle with obsession at times. Do you remember when the projectors would randomly go out? Do you remember that? It's like we're sitting here and preaching and that projector's gone. And 5 minutes later, it's back. And you guys you had sheets of paper in your hand. You're tallying how many times each one goes out. I don't know if you had a betting pool going on or whatever, but I was obsessed with getting those things fixed. It kind of was making me crazy. And having that one dead, that's killing me, you know. Obsession, it's pretty common. I can obsess about relationships too. When my wife and I, when our relationship is only firing on 6 of the 8 cylinders that makes it go, I can obsess about that. And you could say, well, that's good. At least you're paying attention, but that's bad because often when I obsess about something, I tend to make it worse. What about you? Got obsession? Anybody have obsession? We're moving through Colossians, and I think that there's 4 sentences here, 4 verses that speak about who we are and what Christ has done that actually help us with this tendency to obsess about things. So follow along as I read from Colossians chapter 3, starting at verse 1. It says, "Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory." Now, before we dig into that text, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about the nature of obsession. And you may not have ever thought of this, but if you think about it, you'll be like, oh, that's true. Sometimes obsession is a little bit like an addictive drug. As creepy as it sounds, all of us have been obsessed with somebody. You know, maybe it was that boy in 8th grade, or maybe it was that girl in college, or that person in the workplace, or that clerk at the store. You know, that obsession kind of comes into our lives. And at first, the thoughts that we have can be kind of exhilarating. Obsession is kind of like a drug because it's intoxicating. Like, oh, wow, I'm kind of swept away by the very thought of this person. It's so interesting to learn about her and to see how, did you see how she smiles? And wow, her hair, it's just so lovely. And oh man, she's just so, and we generally begin to, in a harmless kind of way, really find ourselves intoxicated by that. But when it tips into obsession, like a drug, it can become something completely different, something that nobody likes. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't have to be about a person. It's not like just about that girl or that guy. You can be obsessed with a motorcycle. You can be obsessed with video games. You can be obsessed with a new phone that you want, a vacation that you're planning. Early on, thinking about all of those things and imagining what it would be like to have them, it kind of fills an empty spot in our lives. And it is kind of like a drug. It's like a drug because it's intoxicating, and it's like a drug because we just can't break free from it. Obsession is something that kind of sticks with us. And think about it for a minute. That phrase, I don't know if you ever used this on a girl, guys, but I can tell you from experience, it doesn't work. This phrase, I just can't live without you. No, I was only in kindergarten when I said that, but I meant it about my cousin Linda, you know? Yeah. But you know, that kind of feels creepy. It kind of feels like obsession. Maybe it is. When you just can't do without it. Maybe obsession has passed that tipping point. It is like an addictive drug. Some people might say, yeah, but you know what? Obsession can really be helpful sometimes. Yeah, but not usually. Not usually. I mean, you can be glad that I was obsessed about these projectors flashing off and on. You can be glad that I am obsessed about that one and intend to make sure it gets fixed, because that helps the whole program. But I want to tell you that unchecked, things that I have been obsessed about in my life, when they are unchecked, have maybe fixed the thing but damaged the relationship along the way. Has that happened to you? Probably has. Probably has. Obsession can kind of be like a gasoline engine without a governor. Back in the day, we had mini bikes. I feel bad for kids today because they don't know what a Briggs & Stratton with a pull start engine is, you know. We had those mini bikes, we'd run them around, you know, so much fun to be on those things. The mini bikes had this thing, that Briggs & Stratton engine had this thing called a governor on it. All gasoline engines at that time, and probably, I don't know about fuel injected, but they have this governor on it that actually kind of make sure that the RPMs stay pretty even. When the load increases, you're going up a hill, it gives it more gas. When you're going down a hill, it gives it less gas. It does that. The other thing the governor does is keeps the RPMs from getting too high, higher than the engine can endure, right? Well, kids with mini bikes, when they learn about governors, it's like, I wonder if we can adjust that. Wonder if we can disconnect that. Wonder if we can take that whole thing off of there. And when you do, instead of suddenly you're going, and that little Briggs & Stratton engine, the piston comes right up through in front of you and just, it blows up, right? I'm not speaking from experience. Honest, I'm not. If the engine's RPMs are not governed, if they're not kept in check, problems are right around the corner. And if your tendency toward obsession is not kept in check, problems are right around the corner. Obsession is going to cause you to lose sleep. It's going to cause you to neglect family, to be irritable, and to be angry. And it can cause you to blow up like an over-revving Briggs & Stratton engine. That's the way it is. Sometimes it's helpful, but not usually. Now, the next thing I'm going to say about the nature of obsession, it might kind of step on your toes. You might not like it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes the problem with obsession is not the object that you're obsessing about. Sometimes the problem is you, the obsessor. Oh, Pastor Steve, give me a break. I like to think it's the something, not the someone. Nope. The problem, most of the time, is the person doing the obsessing. Let's think about that evil queen for a moment, right? In the Snow White story, remember her? What was the problem that caused her to obsess? Was it beauty? You might say, yeah, but I think it was something deeper. Or you might say, well, the problem was Snow White. She's the problem. Everything's going well until Snow White shows up. Nah, it's not the problem. Maybe it's that stinking mirror. No, not really. The problem is the queen. She is obsessed, not just with her beauty, she's obsessed with herself. She has to be the best, the most, the greatest. She's obsessed with being the fairest of them all. Now, that thought that sometimes the problem with our obsessions is us, that thought is worth pondering for a little while. Because often we justify our grip on our obsessions because they're for a good cause. Good grades for my kids. Yeah, I'm obsessed about that. And I will beat the tar out of them if they don't get them. Making memories for my family. We're going on this trip if it kills us. Providing a better home for the future. Those are all good causes, but take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, mirror, mirror on the wall, am I the one I obsess about after all? You may find that you do. You may find that things that you catch yourself obsessing about are really about you and your identity. And when you find out, that's a beautiful thing, although it may be painful, because now you can begin to move beyond it, beyond obsession, the addictive drug that holds you in its grip. Obsession, the out-of-control engine ready to blow. Obsession, the selfish tool with which you manage your persona and your life. I was reading Colossians 3 this week, and it occurred to me that trusting Christ actually frees me from obsession. That as a Christian, I can let go of my obsessions. That's a pretty strong statement. Let me say it again. As a Christian, you can let go of your obsessions. I think that the very first words of Colossians 3 that we read moments ago, that they back that up. The basis for our freedom is the transformation that came with Christ. And that's the first sentence. Since then, it says in 3:1, you have been raised with Christ. Jesus made a difference in your life. And because of that, all these things that follow are true. Since then, you've been raised with Christ, then this, and this. And by the way, this, and this is not 5 steps to overcoming your tendency toward obsession. That's not what this is. The words that follow, since then you've been raised with Christ, go more like this. You're not the same person that you were before. You've been raised with Christ, and then therefore you've been changed. And that raising, that resurrection, made you into a new man or a new woman. And that newness of your life changes everything about you. I was on a leading psychology website this week, and I was researching some of the suggestions that they were listing in different articles about how to manage this problem that we tend to have. And frankly, I found them a little bit lacking. How to overcome obsession. Number 1, distract yourself. If you're a male, there's no problem with that. Squirrel, right? Number 2, find a greater mission. Number 3, my favorite, take up dancing. Well, that might work if I'm obsessing about the dandelions in my yard, right? But I want to tell you, if I'm dealing with a serious issue, if I'm dealing with a child who's struggling socially, or if I'm dealing with the well-being of a friend whose behavior is putting them at risk, or if I'm dealing with failing parents, or if I'm dealing with some news that the doctor gave to me, I'm going to need more than a dance class, buddy. I'm going to need something more. God's word, the passage that we're in, says that you have what you need to break free from the things that bind you. And they are based on that which comes with Christ. Since then, you've been raised with Christ, you can break free from obsession. And I want to tell you, the passage is saying that this change, this transformation is effective. This being raised with Christ allows effective change to come from your new identity in him. When you trusted him as your Savior, he changed you. He changed you so that these words that we love to say, well, I just can't. In some cases, that's a lie. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. The risen you can do things a dead you couldn't. Because you've been transformed, you can control your heart's desires. You can do what God tells all of us to do. Right in the middle of verse 1, you can set your hearts on things above. By the way, the NIV says that, set your hearts on things above. It's the only major translation that I saw that has the word hearts in there. And so I thought, I wonder what the other versions say. I wonder what is meant there. And actually, if you're going to take it more literally, it would say, seek things above. But the word seek there isn't kind of like, I'm kind of looking for maybe a different book to read. It's seek like, I've lost my 3-year-old in the mall, and I am going to find it. My heart is set on this, and I will not be dissuaded. I'm going to find this. So heart isn't a bad word for the NIV scholars to have chosen there, because it carries with it an intensity and a desire. And God is saying, you can direct the intense desires of your heart, which often are pointing in the wrong direction. You can direct those to things above. You can do it because you've been transformed. Your identity is now in Christ, and you can make God you can make God your pursuit. You can hone your hunger for things above, because this verse says that is where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And your identity clears the way for you to choose to desire Christ above all things in a powerful and meaningful and effective way. The outcome of the transformation is effective change that comes from your new identity. You can control the desires of your heart. You can even control your thought life, what goes on in your head. That's kind of what obsession is all about. Like, I just can't stop thinking about this. How'd you sleep last night, Steve? I didn't sleep at all last night because I couldn't stop thinking about the projectors. You know? It's your thought life, right? And the human mind, if it's let to just go wherever it wants to go, it doesn't always go to good places. Verse 2 says at the very beginning, set your mind on things above. How can I possibly do that, God, with all that's going on in my life? How, God, can you even suggest that I find a way to set my minds on things above? I can tell you how. You've been raised with Christ. That's how we began this. Since you've been raised with Christ, set your minds on things above. And you can do that. You can be attentive to, you can be mindful of what's going on inside your head. And you can say, where is my mind? Am I choosing to love that which is good? Is my mind set spiritually on healthy things or on not so healthy things? Am I keeping my conscience clean and in tune with the Spirit of God? You can do this as you turn away from the things of this world, as you set your minds on things above and not on earthly things. You see it on the screen, that bottom line, and not on earthly things. The Greek word, earthly, do you know what that means? Earthly. It's not rocket science. It's just the stuff of this world, that's going to rot. There's an old story told about Charles Wesley. He founded Methodism, the Methodist Church. And the story told about him, he's in front of this beautiful plantation, a southern mansion. I don't know if he's in Georgia or where he is. And the owner and the people around him, they have this visiting church leaders, evangelists. They say, look at that, what do you think of that? And Wesley, I love him for saying this. He says, yeah, it's a shame it's all going to burn. Yeah. You see, John tells us in 1 John 2:17, this world and its desires pass away. But whoever does the will of God lives forever. Because you are raised with Christ, because he has made a change in your heart, you have a God-given supernatural ability to get your mind off the earth and focus your mind on heaven. And you can let go of those obsessive things. This passage is inviting you to live this, to live out this identity that you've been given in Christ. And sometimes that can be hard to do. I mean, let's be real for a minute. I can think of times when I had a death grip on something that I was obsessing about. You know what a death grip is, right? It's when you find out, whoa, this bridge is higher than I thought it was, and it's swinging across this gorge, and I am never letting go of this spot right here on the cable. Death grip. Yeah, there have been times in my life when I've had a death grip on my obsession, and I was afraid to let go of it, because if I don't let go of it, if I don't worry about this, no one else is going to do anything about it. No one else is going to worry about this. I can't let this go. And someone would say, give it to God. And I'd want to just punch him with my free hand because I got this death grip on this, and I'm afraid to let it go. Let me just say, when you're feeling that way, I'm just going to say this sentence. Punch me with your free hand if you want to, but it is safe to let it go. It is safe to let it go. It is safe to live in confidence in who raised you from the dead and who and who he raised from the dead. You can even have confidence in the redeemed you. Face it, most of the time when we're obsessing about something, it's because we're afraid. We're kind of like I'm sure you've seen television shows where someone is being assailed, being assaulted by someone else, and they have all they have is a kitchen knife, and they're holding it, and in bursts the hero, and he's like, what? Come on, I'll take away the bad guy. They put him in the back of the cop car and drive him down the road, and now there's that woman with a kitchen knife, and she is not letting it go. The cops are like, you can put down the knife now. She's not sure she can, because it was keeping her safe. We can feel that way about our obsession. I don't think I can quit worrying about this. But listen to this sentence. I should have put it on the screen. Your obsession was never really keeping you safe. That's an illusion. The one who keeps you safe is God. And when you trust that you are safe with God, you can live your identity. You can be free from worries and obsessions. Verse 3 says that this transformation is actually a transformation that is secured by Christ in God. I mean, look at verse 3. It says, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Hidden with Christ in God. So, obsession, worry, anxiety, those are really old habits that we forgot to forget now that we're new. That sentence makes sense to you? Listen to it again. These old things that we used to have to be addicted to and engage in and do, they are old patterns of thinking and old patterns of loving and old patterns of relating that when we were changed, they should have been gotten rid of, but we forgot to forget them. And so we continue to do them. It's kind of like eyeglasses. There's the guy. He has eyeglasses and he's always playing with them. You know people like that? He's always doing this. Right? He's always adjusting his eyeglasses. Always his hands up at his face. And then he's had them since he was 4 years old. So no wonder he's always doing that, right? But then 20 years later, he turns 24 and he gets contacts. And you're talking to him and he's going like this. And this has literally happened to me before. I'm like, you don't have glasses on. I know, I just do that. I don't know why I do that. I've been doing that for 20 years, and I forgot to do that. That's the way our old ways of relating are, and our old ways of thinking are. When you turned your heart to Christ, he set you free from bondage. The addictions you once had, to worry, to feeling inadequate, to fretting, to being concerned that you would fail, to feeling anxious, Christ freed you from all of that. And all that's left of that is a memory, a habit or behavior that was never effective and is as ridiculous as pushing up glasses that are not on your face. You don't have to do that anymore. You are no longer obligated to do that. The old you is dead. The new you is alive. And that life, look at the words on the screen once more. At the bottom it says, you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. The word for hidden there is the word from which we get encrypted. Yeah, he locked it up. And it's not coming, it's not going anywhere. Your life is hidden, protected, held fast, safe with Christ in God. Let me just say this. If my life is hidden with Christ in God, then what do I really need to obsess about? Your transformation is secure in Christ, and there is a glorious transformation in your future. It is coming with Christ. It is coming through Christ. That's what I read in verse 4. It seems kind of out of place maybe when he's talking about the return of Christ. He says, when Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. But what he's saying is you don't have to obsess now. God has you now and he has you in the future. Your future's so bright that you need Bob Livergood to buy you a pair of sunglasses. All right? Let me just talk to you about your future a minute. Let me read to you about it. Listen to these words from Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. Imagine that for a minute. Coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among his people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And then he said, write this down. For these words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Your future's bright. What are you worried about today? Well, Pastor Steve, I can tell you what I'm worried about. I'm worried about everything today. I mean, if I was in heaven, then obviously I would have no reason, no need to obsess. You're right. But Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 4 say, you don't have a reason to obsess because you're going to heaven. God has you covered. It is safe for you to drop your obsessions, because if Jesus loved you enough to shed his blood on the cross and procure you a place in heaven, he loves you enough to take care of whatever it is that you won't let go of in your mind. By the way, did you notice I said won't let go of, not can't let go of? You are capable of doing this. You're capable of living this. You can make the choice every day, every morning. You can just talk to Jesus and say, thank you for taking care of this. You can own this reality because it was given to you at the cross. And you received it when you received Christ. I'm not a tattoo guy. But you could tattoo this right to your heart and your mind. Since I have been raised with Christ, I can set my heart on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. I can set my mind on things above, not earthly things, but things above and nothing else. I died, and my life is now hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is my life, appears, I also will appear with him in glory. You can do that because of Christ, because you were raised with Christ. Isn't that a beautiful picture? That mirror was a liar in my estimation. What things do you have in your life that cause you to lose sleep? What things are there in your life that make you irritable toward people that you love? What are the things in your life that distract you from what is truly important? How do you like having those things control you? Remember, it wasn't that 7-year-old Snow White. By the way, that's how old the Brothers Grimm have her. It wasn't that 7-year-old Snow White that was controlling the wicked queen. It was the wicked queen's obsession that controlled her. Her own need to be the best, the prettiest, the fairest, the smartest, the wealthiest, the one with the biggest truck. It was all her. I want to invite you to take a look in the mirror and to let go of the things that you obsess about. And I'd kind of like to lead you in a prayer where you can do that as we conclude our time. So as the worship team returns to the platform, I'd like to ask you, if you would please, let's stand and we'll pray together, okay? So here's the deal. We're kind of going to pray through the thoughts that were in the message. And we're kind of going to just take our obsessions and acknowledge that we weren't supposed to be trying to control these things anyway, and that we will trust God. So bow your heart with me. Lord Jesus, there are things in our lives that trouble us and worry us. Sometimes there are things that are near to us, family, friends, even ourselves. Sometimes there are things that are outside of our control, from Ukraine to China to the moon. And without you, we would have every reason to obsess and worry and fret about these things, because these things would be a huge threat to us. And we would have to use, even if it's a kitchen knife, to defend ourselves. We would have to use something. And so obsession is something that is just common to us. But as those who have trusted in you, Jesus, for the forgiveness of our sin and our place in eternity, it seems kind of silly not to trust you with the day-to-day things that we might obsess about. And so we would just ask you to forgive us for that. Forgive me for my tendency to obsess. Forgive me for allowing the engine to rev so high that the flywheel's coming apart. Forgive me for allowing myself to be consumed by things and damaging relationships because of it. We understand as we read your word that since we have been raised with Christ, then we have this newfound freedom. A freedom to direct our heart toward you. And our heart responds. Granted, it wants to go back to earthly things, but then we have that freedom to redirect our mind toward you. And our mind responds. This is not the kind of thing that we experience without you in the center of our life. And so as we have this freedom from you, sometimes we forget that we have it. And sometimes we don't live as men and women that can make healthy choices spiritually. And so at this point, we're taking our very being and placing it before your throne of grace. Our self before your throne, because you are the sovereign God and you call the shots, your throne of grace, a throne that is so kind to us and so forgiving to us. And as we come and place ourselves before you this way, we relax our grip. We literally open our hands and relax our grip on our obsessions. Whether it's our children, our grandchildren, our government, our economy, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our jobs, our hobbies, our health, the health of people we love. All of these things about which we would have to obsess were we not transformed by you, all of these things, these obsessions, we release. We think of Peter's words where he says, cast all your cares on him, on you, Jesus, because he cares for you. Here they are. Take them. Our minds might go the wrong place and our hearts go the wrong place at times, and we might try to pick these up again. Holy Spirit of God, just grab a hold of us by the ear for a minute and say, hey, you forgot to forget about those things. And remind us that we are not in bondage to fear, for you've not given us a spirit of fear. We do not have to live in anxiety because you keep him in peace whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. We do not have to obsess because greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. We pray this prayer not as just a button on the end of a sermon. We pray this prayer not just as a closing thought, but we have done business with you today, God. And we pray with confidence. This is what you want, so we know we're asking according to your will. We pray with confidence. We pray with hope. We pray with peace. We pray with freedom because we have been raised with Christ. In Christ's name, amen. Let's see if the PowerPoint works for the name, or for this last song. Take the name of Jesus with you. If it doesn't, just hum, okay? Take the name of Jesus with you, child of sorrow and of woe. It will joy and comfort give you. Take it then where'er ye go. Precious name, oh how sweet, hope of earth and joy of heaven. Precious name, oh how sweet, hope of earth and joy of heaven. Take the name of Jesus ever as a shield from every snare. If temptations round you gather, breathe that holy name in prayer. Precious name, oh how sweet, hope of earth Amen. Let's conclude our time in prayer, and I'm going to ask Lloyd if he would pray. Lloyd?